Hey everybody, it's Mark from Northeast Bass Fishing. I want to do a video and I want to talk about my favorite way to fish. And my favorite way to fish is flipping, pitching, and casting jigs. And I was going to what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through some of the jigs that I have, some of the jigs I've made, and show you how to make your own if you want to. And just like the rods and reels and line I like to use. But like, this is just an old Wacky Worm jig. Wacky Worm is a store up in Pennsylvania, and they used to make these rubber skirted jigs, which I used to love and I've got a ton of, but it just happened to be here on the desk, so I thought I'd show you this one first. But that's just a Wacky Worm jig. But any jig that you like or you want to use is fine. If you're a jig fisherman, you're like me, you probably have hundreds and hundreds of jigs. So I've got boxes and boxes of different styles, and these are Wacky jigs and old Stanley jigs. Like, these are old, like 3/16 ounce Stanley jigs from back in the day. More Wacky Worm jigs. You guys who used to get those at Wacky Worm, 20 years ago or whenever. But any jig that you like is fine. I'm not going to tell you one jig is better than the other. I have a lot of these old Pro USA B&L Baits jigs that I used to throw a lot. And, whatever jig you throw is all good. It's, confidence, personal preference. I like to use pretty much a standard Arky head jig. But there's no... And these jigs in this box, I believe, I made all these jigs. Now, I don't make the jig heads. I buy the jig heads. I buy the skirts. I buy the rattles. But I'm not making jig heads in my basement. But you can make, what I like about making this, I believe, is a 1/2 ounce. And there's a 1/2 ounce jig for you. And you can, what I like about making my own is I can make any, skirt pattern and rattle pattern that I like. But these are like 1/2 ounce, 3/8, 3/4, and those are all jigs over the years that I've made. These I believe are like 1/2 ounce jigs. This is just a different box, which is kind of neat. These I think are 1/2 ouncers. These are all jigs I made too. Now there are store brands of jigs that I bought. And I'm not going to really talk about swim jigs a lot, even though I swim a jig a lot when I'm flipping it and pitching it. But if you like a dirty jigs like swim jig, I've got those. I'm not sure all these kinds. These are Strike King, different Hack Attack jigs and Strike King, different Strike King jigs. Dirty Jigs makes a nice jig. That's more of their Arky style, which is what I like to throw head-wise. This is another Dirty Jigs. This might be the Scott Canterbury jig, I think, with that head. But like I said, any one of these that you like, this type, this I believe is the Strike King structure jig. It's got that different type of head. They're all good. They're all good. But, over the years, store-bought jigs have gotten, in my opinion, a little overpriced. $5 for one jig or more is a lot of money. Like Power Team Lures. Got a box of them. They make nice jigs. You guys give me a quick glance at those. Beast Coast. You guys have seen some Beast Coast stuff. They make a nice jig. Let's pull one out here. I mean, that's a nice Beast Coast jig right there. There's a Beast Coast for you, if you like Beast Coast jigs. Real big rattle, or heavy weed guard on them. Let's see, these are Phoenix jigs. You guys like, whoever uses Phoenix jig, it's nice because they do the living rubber still, so that water's a little colder. If you like those rubber skirted jigs. But like I said, nobody's bad. They're all good. V&M jigs, I got some of those. This is just a box of those old Wacky Worm jigs. Which, when I was, really starting to get into fishing, this is the jig that I used. I'd go up to Wacky Worm every spring, and order, a bunch. They made them for you. So still got those. Bass Junkie jigs. neighbor of mine, Jim, makes a nice jig. We've got some of his jigs, which are really cool. Put some nice fish on these, different head styles. These Bass Junkie jigs. You can find Jim's Instagram account. You can make anything you like. Facebook. Like I said, anything that you want to throw is good. And I used to love these. I don't know if Falcon makes these anymore. I haven't seen them around. Whenever I see one like somewhere, I grab them. These are these old Falcon jig boxes, which I thought were awesome. So you can keep all your jigs like pretty well organized. And these are all jigs that I made over the years. So and then we got boxes and boxes and boxes of those. You guys can get the idea. So like if you're a jig fisherman, you got a lot of jigs. Those are all my blue ones. And so I got them, you know, kind of organized with color-wise. Now, I kind of showed you the day when I got those Beast Coast skirts, how I make jigs. And so this is just a 3/8 ounce jig head, an Arky style jig head that I got from Lure Parts online. And you can get 5 of these for $6 or $7. The more you buy, even you get a better discount. So, you know, you can get the skirts, the jig heads, and, you know, and the rattles, and make yourself your own jigs with whatever, you know, skirt pattern you like, and save yourself some money. And it's kind of cool when you put one together and you catch fish on it. So, if you guys didn't see my video the other day where I showed you how to do it, it's really simple. Here I got my skirt. Now this is a pre-made skirt. Now the pre-made skirts make it a little easier. I'll show you how to do one when you just have the skirt material and it's not, you know, doesn't already have that skirt collar on it. But I always, like I said the other day, that longer side is what I like to put on first. And just run it over your hook. And all the way up. Sometimes that little collar will kind of flip on you. It doesn't really matter though. But now I've got a brown jig head, 3/8 ounce, with a brown skirt with orange tips, which is one of my favorite colors. Then you just kind of comb it out. Make sure none of these ends get stuck together sometimes. I always just pop everything off, make sure everything's straight. There you go. Here's your 3/8 ounce jig. Now, like I was talking about a little bit the other day, I do like rattles on my jigs. And these little rattle collars you can buy. Like I said, Lure Parts online, wherever you like to buy components, you can get them. Just slide that over your hook. You know, those little Mickey Mouse ears. And this is, I got these from fishingskirts.com because they make, like I said, I mentioned this the other day, they make a lot of different color rattles. So this is brown. You don't have to match them. A lot of times I just use plain black. But these just go right in those rabbit ears. Now for a couple bucks, I've got a 3/8 ounce flipping jig. I didn't pay $5, $6, $7 for it. There you go. All ready to fish. Got rattles. There you go. Another one I did. Oh, sometimes these will rip off on you. This is now this isn't necessarily a swim bait head, but these white heads, I like this. I use, and I swim a jig a lot when I fish it. I'll talk to you more about that later, but with these white heads, even if it's not your traditional swim bait type head, if I'm just, you know, fishing this around docks and stuff, I can just swim it fine, even with that Arky head. This is kind of like a chartreuse blue, almost kind of like a sexy shed type. This I could use in real dirty water, or I could just swim it around. So do the same thing, just cinch it over. And the pre-made skirts do make it a little easier. I mean, I'll show you how to put one together. It's not difficult if you just buy the skirt materials. But there's a nice, blue chartreuse. I'm going to flip it over, make sure everything's kind of laid out there. All right. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right. So now I'm going to put my skirt on. Got my Mickey Mouse ears. Put them over the hook and the collar. Cinch it down. Now for this one, I just have clear rattles. And like I said, any color you want. You could put chartreuse. I have some chartreuse ones. You could put chartreuse ones on if you want to get a little more color. But for this one, I'll just stick with the clear. I don't think the color is that big of a difference. I just do it to kind of just have a little different look there. So you kind of pop it in and pop the other one in. There you go. So you get your rattles. So I could use this as a swim jig, dirty water jig, swim this around by docks, pontoon boats. Sweet. Couple bucks, you get your own jig, 3/8 ounce jig. Now this is it's a green pumpkin head. I got some green rattles. Got my rabbit ears, or Mickey Mouse ears, whatever you want to call it. Now let's say you just have, now this is from Lure Parts Online. This is just skirting material, and this color is mean green. So if you ever go on to Lure Parts Online, if you buy skirting material, this is just what they call mean green. And this is a skirt collar. Now this material here is not already banded together. It's just the skirting material. So when I make a jig, I usually take 2 pieces. You could put 3 if you want to have it really be full, but 2 to me is perfect. There's 2 pieces of skirting material. What you need is this little tool. This is just a skirt making tool. They're real cheap. I probably got 5 of them in the box over there. But what I do is I take my skirt collar, and you can get all this stuff from Lure Parts Online. You probably get a pack of these, a pack of 100 or 50 of these for a couple bucks. Then you don't need them for a while. That's just a yellow or chartreuse, whatever it is, skirt collar. What you do is you take this tool and you just run that over it. And you run it all the way to the end, and just don't go over the very end. I always leave it so it's just right up to the end there. And see how when you push this up, it has like that little hook in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that hook. I'm going to take these 2 bands of silicone skirt, hold them together, and I'm going to take that little hook, I hope you can see that little hook on there, and put it at the end of the skirt, right in the middle. And then nice and easy, you just kind of pull it, and hopefully it'll work and not rip on me. And I'm going to pull it back into the tube. So it's kind of on that hook, and it's going to pull it into the tube. You see how it kind of goes up? Once that gets there, then you pull that back, you get it to the end, it pulls your thing in, and your skirt in, and then I'm going to pop it off. I'm going to push it back out, pull it back out. You can pull it, push it, take it off. Every now and then this might rip on you, doesn't matter. You're going to cut that end off anyway. Now, you don't want your skirt collar that high up. So I'm just going to very easily, because these sometimes will rip on you a little. So just be careful, and they won't. You'll get used to it. The more you do it, the more gentle you get with it, the more confidence you get in doing it, the better you get at it. But I'll keep it so that side's just a little longer. So now I got these 2 ends here. I'll just take my scissors. And put the ends that are together, and hold them together with my thumbs, my fingers, and I just snip those off. And then I'll do that on the other side. Snip those off. So now I have a banded skirt in the mean green color, which is like a green, looks like there's some red flake in there. Nice clear water color. So now, it's just like before. I've got the jig ready to go, and now I've got the skirt. Do the same thing. Cinch it through, run it up the collar to the top. And sometimes I'll use this tool actually to comb out my skirts, because anytime they might be stuck together, this will get them apart for you. There you go. And then flip it over. And if you like to trim your skirts, you could take this down. You could look and say, oh, maybe I want to trim this a little. And I could, like, I don't want to do it over here. I don't know if you guys can see that. You know, some people like a little shorter skirt. Maybe you want to trim it down. Trim those edges down a little, make it more straight. There's a nice 3/8 ounce jig, and you pretty much did everything yourself. So for the couple dollars you spend on the skirt materials, a couple dollars you spend on some jig heads, some rattles, you can make 10, 15, 20 jigs for a lot cheaper than buying, you know, the store-bought ones. And I'm gonna, you know, put my rabbit ears on there, put my Mickey Mouse ears on there. And like I said, I got a green rattle for this. And if you want to get a little color contrast, throw an orange one on, throw a red one on. I use red hooks, red collars a lot, or oop, I broke it. Sometimes if you're a little rough, this can break this little thing. So whenever that happens, you could take it off if you like. Wonder what I'll do is if I ever have one that breaks on me like that, and I don't want to, you know, I'll just like maybe snip that off since it's broken, and I'll just make this one, and just turn it around, and make that one a single rattle, which is fine. All right. So that is how you make your own, you know, jig setups, which it's fun to do. And then when you go out and you catch a fish, you know, with you know, a jig that you kind of put together all the components, you know, it's kind of cool when you catch one on your first, you know, your first handmade jig, so to speak. Now, as far as trailers for your jigs, I'm a person that, you know, I guess I'm kind of old school, is I like to throw pork at trailers, and I know pork is not readily available. Some of us have stockpiles of, of pork. You guys who used Uncle Josh, and I always used, back in the day, my favorite was Super Pork. Super Pork, I believe, was a California company that went out of business years ago. And I stocked up on it years ago. I found somebody that was selling it, and I got a lot. So I'm stocked up for a long time. And 90% of the time, I'm probably using pork as a trailer, even in the summer. It used to be a cold water way to fish. I like it because when I swim a jig, that pork has a really great natural action. Now, if you're getting new into jig fishing, you're not going to be able to go out to the store and find pork. You know, unless you have a buddy you know that's, you know, got some Uncle Josh or some Super Pork in his basement or in his fishing room, you're going to be using a plastic trailer, which is fine. Now, when it comes to plastic trailers, there's one that I use most of it, and that's the Power Team Lures Coral Hors d'oeuvre, and they make lots of colors. Now, this is only one box. Now, that's the Power Team Lures Coral Hors d'oeuvre, which is my favorite soft plastic jig trail. Especially like this kitchen sink color is one of my favorites. But, you know, you can match these any way. You know, if I'm going to take this brown jig, just in this box alone, now this is, I don't remember specifically what all these colors are, but this is their crawfish looking one. It's got that orange belly. if you just cinch that on there, and if you want to trim down like those two back legs, like there, you can if you want to make it shorter. I don't do that. You know, it's really personal preference, because to me this trailer is compact enough. But I'll just, you know, put it through there, and there's enough of that collar, that little collar hook there, to really push that back, and it kind of flares out these rattles, which is nice too. Now that right there is a jig that's ready to go. Now for you guys who aren't throwing pork, there's a nice setup for you, which I would imagine you can catch fish anywhere with that setup. That's with just a crow hors d'oeuvre on there. The green one, let's see what we got in this box, because I do have a second box. They do make a lot of different colors. I might have a better match here, but you don't have to match it. You can do anything you want. You could put I could take this and put a black trailer on. I could put a blue one on. It's really up to you. You know, whatever you like, whatever your fish are eating in your, you know, if you're a jig fisherman, you probably like me. Sometimes you turn over a few rocks around the lake. You know, if you're at the boat ramp, turn a rock over, see what those crayfish look like, see what color they are. Now, you're probably not going to find a crayfish that's like that, green like that, but it's still an awesome looking jig. Now, I could take a watermelon. Here's a crow hors d'oeuvre watermelon. I could use that as a trailer. That would match nicely. This is like the blue green pumpkin. Green pumpkin is never a bad option. Here's a green pumpkin with purple flake. You know, any color you want, if you have faith in it, it's good. You could even take one of these red ones. Make that your trailer. How cool would that look? You know, sometimes the craziest combo is what works that day, because if you're throwing a jig and there's 20 guys else out on the lake throwing a jig, and you've got something a little different, it could be the way to go. Like, here's just like a straight black. I don't know if they call this straight black. I forget what they call this one. I have to look on the Power Team site. But that would work good, because it's got more of a green to it. That would be perfect right there. But anything's good if it works for you. So that's my favorite plastic trailer. Any crawfish type trailer you like, go with it. It's fine. That'll work. Now let's say you're like me and you like to throw pork. Now, people don't like pork. It's a little messy. You can't keep them dry during the day, which I get. Or they dry out during the day, I should say. You can't keep them wet. When I fish it, if I'm jig fishing all day, I usually have my jig, if I'm not fishing it and I've got pork on, I just let it hang over the side of the boat in the water. But let's say I'm going to throw this green jig here, and I'm going to throw it with super pork. Now, for you pork guys out there, what you want to do, let me see if I've got a worm here that I can use. I'll just snip this one in half. If you just use pork here, or you use the kind of trailer that you're just going to, you know, like maybe a chunk, and you're just going to hook it on there, like a plastic, you're just going to take it and just stream it through. You want to have some kind of a soft plastic here to keep it so that your pork or your trailer isn't always flopping down here. So what I'll do is, now this is just, I just happen to have this worm here. A lot of times I use like a power worm, because it's, I wish I had a better worm here. Yeah, I'll show you how I do this. If you have a bag like this, you know you probably jig fish a lot. You say, what the heck is in this bag? This is just pieces and pieces of worm. Whenever I've used worms or Senkos or whatever, and they get all destroyed, and what I'll do is I just cut them up, because I can use them on my jigs down the road. Because if you're jig fishing, you're always thinking about jigs. So what I'll do, now this piece might be a little long. I'm going to make that a little shorter. So what kind of worm this is, I don't really know. But I'm going to take this little piece of worm, and I'm going to thread that on the hook, because that's going to keep whatever my trailer is up and have it not, you know, roll back into the jig. So just run it along here, So that is going to now allow whatever's my trailer is to rest on that and not flop all the way back. So let's just say I'm going to use this. This is a dark red super pork. This just happened to be one that was nearby. Now, if you guys have never used pork before, that's like a pork. That's a super pork frog. So now I can just take that and put it on my hook, and there's my pork bait. Now, when these are in the water, they have a lot of action. So I wish some company would get back into the pork business. Not that I need more pork. I got a lot of super pork. But you would think in 2020 maybe they could make even a better pork product. But so it is as it is. There isn't. Nobody's doing it right now. Maybe one day. Maybe one day it'll come back. But see how the pork rests on that worm there. So it's not coming all the way down the hook, getting caught up in my skirt. So I can really swim that, and those legs really have a nice action. So I really liked pork. Plus, super pork, what I liked about it is you could always get it back off the hook. Uncle Josh, it was like you had to get a special tool, you had to cut it off or forget it. So if you have pork and you still use it, we're all on the same team with that. And then at the end of the day, just pop it back in there. Eventually that hole might get a little, works itself, gets a little bit, and it falls off, but at least pork floats, you can save them if they're floating around the lake. But most of you, I'm sure, if you're fishing jigs now, you're probably using plastics. But if you like pork, now if you're going to use a chunk, let me see if I can get a chunk for you quick. And get through all these rods. Let's say you're somebody who's going to just use a plastic chunk. Now these are just a few different, like this is a, this might be from Wacky Worm. I don't know if it's a Wacky Worm or a net bait. It's probably from Wacky Worm. But let me see what would be one. Let's say you're just going to use a regular chunk. And I don't know if these are Strike King or who makes them, because I don't really use these that often anymore. Let's just say this one right here. I think this might be a Strike King. Let's say you're just using these regular plastic chunks. With that worm on there, it's the same idea as the pork. Now it can rest on that. So I can just take that and put it right through, and it's going to stay up, and it'll swim nice in the water. So I don't use these as often as I use the croix hors d'oeuvre or the pork, obviously, but you know, there's lots of options out there. And these will catch fish. These will catch fish. You know, if you don't want to mess with pork, if you have the option of getting any, you know, something like these different kind of trailers will work good for you. But there's tons of different kinds out there. It's really, like it's everything else, personal preference. Okay, so those are the trailers that I like to use when I jig fish. Now, as far as rods and reels, I like to do, when I flip, I'm a righty. I think I showed you guys this book before. I flip with lefty retrieve reels. And the reason I do that is because my power hand is my right hand. When I pitch my jig out or flip it out or cast it out, my rod is in my right hand. I don't have to switch over then to my left hand, which is not my power hand, and keep my rod in there and reel with my power hand. I am reeling, holding the rod with my power hand when I use this lefty reel. This is what I use lefty reels for, flipping and pitching. I can use a righty reel for spinnerbait fishing or crankbait fishing or whatever else. But when I flip, I like to use a lefty reel. And the reels I've been using mostly lately, I am a member of the Ardent Pro staff, so I do like the Ardent. This is a Ardent Elite or Apex Elite, and what I like about these is they're very light. You flip all day for 8 hours, you know, it's a lot on the elbow and the shoulder. A light reel and rod setup has been great. When I first started flipping and pitching, everything was not as light as it is now, so you'd fish all day, you would know it. But this is two of the Apex Elites I just happen to have. They don't have them on a rod yet. I haven't done that much flipping yet this year. The weather hasn't really been conducive of it yet. But these two reels, two that I'll use. I also have. I'll show you the Ardent stuff first, quick. This is just this is the Ardent. This is the old Denny Brower flipping reel, and you can see it's different. There's only enough line in there for flipping and pitching. You're not casting this way out. It's short pitches, short flips. They don't make this in a lefty right now, but I know they can make it in a righty. So if you are a lefty, opposite holds true. You'd use your right hand. But this is on a 7.5 medium heavy. This is just a flip and pitch rod from Ardent. So that's one of my setups right there. Let's see. Now, I don't have a lot of, like I said, a lot of jig setups already because the weather has not really been conducive for flipping and pitching yet. Now, this is a C-Force Ardent reel, and this is really nice. The C-Force is, I love the spinning reel, and the baitcaster is sweet too. Very smooth, very nice looking. This is also an Ardent, this is a flipping stick. The Ardent flipping stick is a 7.5 foot, but it's medium heavy. Now, a lot of my flipping sticks before I got these Ardent flipping sticks were heavy rods. So these are medium heavies, which are good. That I think this might be that Beast Coast skirt on a jig head I put together for you the other day. That's what that is on there. It's a jig on there. This is just a rocker head with a Rage Menace on there. And this is an Ardent Grand reel. It's a lefty. The Grand is really, it's probably their top of the line reel, and they're really nice. Is it my favorite? I like the Apex Elite a lot. The Grand might be becoming my favorite, but they're all good. And that Denny Brower flipping reel is good too. It's not a Denny Brower anymore, but they still have the flipping reel. But the Apex Grand is probably their top of the line reel. Great for flipping, great for casting. I have some righties, I have some lefties. And this is the Football Jig and Worm Ardent rod. What is that? That's a 7.4 and it's medium heavy. So these are all medium heavies. So that's 3 of my setups. I don't know how well you can see back here. 1, 2, 3, another 10 flipping sticks. And, I'm not going to tell you that one company is crap and one company is good. I'm a member of the Ardent Pro staff, so I use the Ardent rods a lot lately. I'm also a member of the Pure Fishing Select Anglers program, so I like Abu Garcia stuff. This is an Abu Garcia Vendetta 7.5 foot heavy flipping stick, which is awesome. If you guys are Abu guys, and the Vendetta is very, easy on the wallet. And a lot of this depends on how much you're willing to spend. I'm not going to tell you you only need $200 or $300 rods. My first flipping stick that I used for years was this old Bass Pro. I still have one laying around. This is the old Bass Pro. I don't know how well you can see that. It's going to be upside down, but Graphite series. These were like $20 or $30 from Bass Pro. I think this is a 7.5 foot heavy, and this is what I flip with. I had $30 Daiwas and these for flipping, and they work great. So you can go out and flip with a $30 rod. I would suggest a heavy. I like heavy rods, long rod, 7.5, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, whatever. And it makes it nice to fit in your rod box when they collapse like that. But this was my first flipping stick, 7.5 foot heavy Bass Pro Graphite series, because they were cheap. So whatever you can afford is good. You don't have to spend the most money of everybody on the lake. Ardent also makes an Edge series rod. This is their 7.5 foot. I believe this is a 7.5 foot. Where is it? Yeah, I think this is a, I think a 7, actually it might be a 7.9. And this is heavy. And this is a heavy rod. So it really helps if I have that, that Apex Elite there because it's so light. It kind of offsets it because it's a heavy rod. It's heavier than those other flipping sticks. So if I'm going to go, you know, in heavy, heavy, heavy grass, I want this heavy rod. And this is the Ardent Apex Edge. And it's a heavy. That's a heavy one. This is another, this might be one of the older flipping sticks. This is a 7.6 medium heavy. This is also Ardent. This is probably a Denny Brauer one, but another Ardent. Also got, this is a Fenwick. And this is a Fenwick HMG. And this one is a 7.5, and it's also heavy. I like, you know, I've got long arms, so I like those 7.5 foot rods. But that's a Fenwick. So if you like Fenwick, I've got a couple. These are a couple of Castaways. You know, this was one of my first more expensive flipping sticks. This is the old Castaway 8-foot heavy flipping stick. This has kind of become my frogging rod, even though I do have an Ardent frogging rod. But this has kind of become my frogging rod the last few years. But, you know, I like Castaway stuff. Not overly expensive. This is another Castaway. I'll turn this around, you guys can see it better. It's another Castaway. I think this is a 7.5 footer or 2. And knowing me, it's heavy. Flip it. It's a Castaway graphite rod. Flipping and pitching. 7.5. And it collapses. All good stuff. All good stuff. And 3 of my best rods. Now, these are custom rods. I think I might have shown you these before. These are from a local guy in New Jersey, a Dana, who makes Dango custom rods. And he's made me 3 flipping sticks over the years, and put a few tips on for me over the years that I broke off. But when I'm really flipping, like almost like that Ardent Edge, when I'm flipping real heavy stuff, these are the ones I use. You know, they're all they're custom rods, so they're, you know, kind of cool here. Even got my name on it. So Dana does a nice job. So whenever I'm in the market for another flipping stick, give him a call. But I can get these around without hitting myself in the head. But I got 3 of those. So when flipping season comes, one or 2 of those will definitely be in the boat with a reel on it. So that is, unless I missed something up in the rafters there of where all the rods are in. That's my rods and reels that I like to use. I have become pretty much the last couple years a Sunline fluorocarbon guy. On most of my flipping sticks, all of them really, it's probably Sunline fluorocarbon. I'm not a big braid guy when it comes to flipping, especially around here. Our weeds in New Jersey are not that thick. You know, if I was living down in Texas or in Florida and fishing where, you know, I'm going to catch a 10-pound bass in heavy weeds, I'd probably have some more braid on, but I have no problem getting fish out of the cover around here on 20-pound fluoro. And I do like the Sunline. I've tried other kinds, and they're good, but I seem to like the Sunline. That's been my go-to the last couple of years. So I think that was all I really wanted to talk about as far as jig fishing goes. You know, what I do a lot is, you know, it's flipping, it's pitching, and it's casting. Most of the time, it's just pitching the jig to cover, to docks, to rocks, to laydowns, to weed lines. You know, I don't do you know, football head jigs. I got a ton of them. That's kind of a different topic, really, the way you fish them. Swim jigs. When I fish a jig, I'm swimming it a lot. When I fish a jig on a dock, I'm casting it out along that dock, and I'm kind of moving it along the side of that dock. You know, after I flip it up under there and let it sit for a minute, I'm going to swim it back, because then that pork or whatever my trailer is, that really gets a good action. So, you know, I don't really say I'm swimming a jig, you know, I'm throwing a swim jig per se, but I am swimming it a lot. But that's pretty much it. it's jig fishing is awesome. A lot of people, say I don't detect the bite. My advice is that if you feel anything different, set the hook, because a lot of times something's going to pull back. You may get hung up, but that's part of the deal with flipping and pitching. You may lose a few jigs, but that's okay too. You go home and you make yourself 5 more, and then you go out fishing for the day. It's all good, and you can get that jig into the tiniest spot. One of the best ways to learn how to flip and pitch was going out on lakes with a lot of docks and getting the hang of putting that jig the spot you want it, and practice. Get that, work on that, that pitch of that jig, and getting your rod and your reel comfortable with your rod and your reel and the line, and get everything tuned to you. Because the rod that feels great for me may not feel great for you. Everybody's different, and reel and all that. So it's really just get out there on the water. A lake with a lot of docks is a great place to practice. And, you're going to get your backlashes, you're going to get hung up. That's okay, it's all part of the deal. But get out there and flip all day. When I first got lefty reels, they came in the mail. I got some old cheap Daiwas from Bass Pro. And I went out on the lake, and I used them all day. And I just started flipping them. I felt weird in the beginning, and I just got used to it. Now, if I try to flip with a righty, it doesn't feel right. So, practice. We say practice makes perfect, and for flipping, it definitely does. So, this is a great bait. It's a great bait. If I could have one bait all the time, every day, this would be it, a jig, because it catches lots of fish and it catches big fish. I think that's it. If I think of anything else, I'll make part 2. But if you guys like this, if you want to talk more about jigs, I don't mind. So, the only other thing I can think of that I just thought of, because I was talking on the Tech Baits page with the guys the other night, is scent. Some people don't really care about scent. I like to use scent, especially when I'm using pork, because I think the pork really sucks the scent in, and that little worm that you put on there, that gets a little scent in there, that skirt gets a little scent. I like scent on, especially garlic, on my jigs. And I don't know what I did with it. I found something, I don't know where it is. We used to use back in the day this, oh, here I got it. And the only reason I thought of this is because we were talking about scent the other day. This is what they used to call, I don't know if they still make them, the juice jug. And what you do, and I found this, and it still had scent in it from I don't know how many years ago. What you did is you just take this plastic thing, and it's been sitting up, soaking for the last 48 hours to try to get the stink out of it. I think the last time is I just took like 10 different scents that had a little bit left and just dumped them all in here and shook them up. But you take your jig and you fill this up with whatever scent you like. You take your jig and you plop it in there. And, while you're fishing all day, if you're jig fishing all day, dump it in there, give it a bath in that garlic and crawfish scent, whatever it is you got in there, and keep going. And it makes a mess. It is a messy thing. So if you have a nice bass boat, do not put this on your carpet. I used it on my old reservoir boat, and like the area where this sat was all grimy and sticky, just like this side was. But if I ever use this on my skeeter, which I doubt, it's going to be sitting in like a garbage can, so I don't get any of this scent on the carpet. But this is a great way to really soak your jig into scent. Now I'll just kind of spray my, or rub it on now. But I don't know if any of you guys use this thing still, or if you have one in your fishing garage or wherever. But that's the old juice jug, and it was kind of funny when I found it the other day and opened it up, and whew, I thought it was going to fall over. But I think that's all. All guys, if you got any questions, if I missed anything, if you could put it in the comments, I'll do my best to answer it. But this is the way I like to throw a jig and the way I like to make jigs. If you like to buy, your jigs in the store, your Strike Kings or your or whoever you like, whatever jig company you like, Dirty Jigs or whatever. They're all good. You know, it depends on how much you want to spend. Just like reels and rods and all that stuff. How much do you want to spend? What are you comfortable with? You know, I'm more of a moderate guy when it comes to rods and reels. You know, I don't have, you know, $500 rods and reels. The Arden stuff I use, the Abu Garcia stuff I use, to me it's good. It's good. It works for me. So, like I said, if you have any questions about jig fishing, feel free to ask. I hope this helps some. If you guys are new to jig fishing, you know, get yourself some jigs, go out and try it. You'll really fall in love with it. It's a great way to catch big fish, and it's a fun way to fish. It's hand-to-hand combat, which I like. So that's it for now. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you guys on YouTube. Mark out.